The footage is 22 seconds long, and for 19 of them it shows almost nothing. A stairwell, concrete dust hanging in gray light, a man breathing hard into a microphone strapped beside his cheek. Then the operator pivots left. The camera swings across a doorway, and for the length of a single heartbeat, 11 frames, just under half a second, a Russian soldier's left arm fills the frame, sleeve, shoulder, and a patch. The clip ends. No caption, no location, no readable date. And one question hangs over those 11 frames. Whose arm is that? And does the patch on it tell the truth? Retention_checkpoint 030 hook resolution tease. This is not a story about a battle. It is the story of how a small group of open-source analysts spent 3 weeks chasing those 11 frames, enhancing them, arguing over them, very nearly throwing them away, to put a name in English to a Russian formation that the published order of battle said should not have been standing in that doorway at all. By the end, they had a candidate. They also had a lesson about the most common mistake in the field: trusting a blurry patch more than it deserves. To understand why 11 frames could matter, start with the ground they were filmed on. The clip surfaces in March 2024, weeks after the city of Avdiivka falls. Avdiivka sits just north of Russian-held Donetsk, and for 10 years it is the hinge of the Eastern Front. Russia opens a full assault on October 10, 2023, grinding toward the giant coke and chemical plant on the northern edge of town. By February 17, 2024, Ukrainian forces withdraw. In the final days, units of the Azov movement, publicly, the 3rd Assault Brigade is reported moving in to cover the retreat, are fighting through industrial sectors where the front line runs building to building, sometimes floor to floor. That matters because of who Russia says is there. Through the winter, Russian and Ukrainian reporting place a mix of formations on the Avdiivka axis: regular army motor rifle brigades, elements of a tank division, and the older units of the 1st Army Corps. The former Donetsk separatist formations folded into Russia's 8th Combined Arms Army. Knowing which of those is holding a given block is not trivia. It tells analysts how many men are committed, how exhausted they are, whether fresh regulars or worn-down local conscripts are doing the dying. A single confirmed patch can move that picture. So when the clip lands, a handful of analysts, the kind who archive telegram dumps for a living, flag it. The poster gives nothing. No channel of origin, no geotag, no claim. The metadata is stripped, as it almost always is by the time a file has bounced through 3 platforms. The first task is not the patch at all. It is proving the footage is even real, and even from where everyone assumes. We pulled the clip apart frame by frame, and the first thing that became clear is how little there was to work with. The helmet cam runs at 30 frames a second, but the operator is moving, the light is failing, and the camera is a cheap action model with heavy compression. The 11 frames showing the sleeve are smeared by motion blur. Worse, the file has been re-uploaded so many times that JPEG compression has eaten the fine detail, the exact thing a patch is made of. Zoom in, and the insignia dissolves into a porridge of square artifacts. There is a shape, there is color, there is no clean line. Before the patch, geolocation. The stairwell offers 2 anchors, a distinctive cracked window frame, and, through a blown-out wall in one frame, a sliver of an industrial skyline. Analysts cross-reference that skyline against satellite imagery and ground photos of the Avdiivka coke plant district. It is slow, unglamorous work, matching a roofline angle, the spacing of 2 chimneys, the curve of a conveyor gantry. After 2 days, the match is good enough to say with reasonable confidence that the footage is filmed inside the northern industrial belt of Avdiivka, consistent with the final week of fighting. Time of year fits. Bare trees, gray light, no foliage. That is one loop opened and partly closed. The where is probably settled. The when is bounded to a window. The who, the patch, is still a smear. And here the investigation hits its first real wall. The obvious move is enhancement. Stack the 11 frames, align them, average out the noise, and let detail emerge from the blur. In theory, a moving subject across many frames gives you more information than any single frame holds. In practice, the subject is moving, the camera is moving, and the alignment keeps failing. The first enhancement pass produces something worse than the original, a confident, sharp-looking patch that is mostly the algorithm's invention. This is the trap. Modern upscalers do not recover detail, they hallucinate plausible detail. Feed a smear into an AI sharpener and it will hand you a crisp patch that looks authoritative and means nothing. An analyst who publishes that has not identified a unit. They have published a guess wearing a uniform, so the team throws the AI pass out and goes backward to the slow method. Manual frame alignment using fixed points on the sleeve seam. Conservative noise reduction. No invented edges. What survives is humble. An overall outline, a two-color layout, and the ghost of what might be lettering along a curved lower edge. Not a fingerprint, a silhouette. Reattention_checkpoint. Approximately 7 o'clock microfinal 1 Dalogay. By the end of the first week, they had a clean as possible silhouette and a place. The lead was alive, but the silhouette matched not one catalog entry. It matched 4. And one of those 4 wasn't supposed to exist anywhere near that stairwell. Here is the part that doesn't sit right with most people who haven't done this work. We tend to imagine a unit patch as an identity card, one design, one formation, worn correctly, telling you exactly who you are looking at. The evidence tells a different story. Russian sleeve insignia in this war are a mess. Regular brigades wear formation patches, yes, but soldiers also buy commercial patches at markets, units share stocks, men transfer and keep their old insignia, and captured or scavenged kit gets worn for warmth with whoever's badge is still sewn to it. A patch is not a fingerprint. It is at best a strong hint that has to survive cross-examination. The team builds the cross-examination methodically. They take the surviving silhouette and lay it against open catalogs of Russian formation and brigade insignia, the patient, years-long cataloging work that OSINT communities and groups like Bellingcat have leaned on for a decade. The matching is done on 3 independent traits, never one: shape of the field, round, shield, or rectangular; color layout, which color sits where; and any visible glyphs, numerals, the double-headed eagle, a saint, a beast, a slogan. Match on one trait and you have nothing. Match on all 3 and you have a candidate. The shape narrows it fast. The field is rounded, not the rectangular tab common to many regular army units. The color layout, a darker center against a lighter border, knocks out 2 of the 4 candidates. That leaves the ghost of lettering, and this is where the obstacle bites. The curved glyphs at the bottom could be Cyrillic. They could be a torn edge. For 3 days, the lettering refuses to resolve, and without it, the candidate list will not shrink below 2. The fix, when it comes, is almost embarrassingly low-tech. One analyst pulls a second clip, posted to a different channel the same week, geolocated to the same district, showing a Russian soldier from behind, and on his shoulder, far better lit, the same color layout and a legible curve of text. 2 ambiguous images, triangulated, become one readable claim. What the lettering points to is a formation of the 1st Army Corps, the old Donetsk separatist structure, now under Russian Army command, rather than the regular motor rifle brigade that several reports had placed holding that exact block. The most consistent single match, on shape, color, and the recovered glyphs, lines up with a 1st Army Corps motor rifle formation, with a 1st Army Corps brigade-level unit as the strongest candidate. In English-language reporting, no one has previously tied a named unit to footage from this stairwell. The team has, for the first time, a name to attach, and immediately they distrust it. Retention_checkpoint, Approximately 13:30 microfinal 2. They had their candidate written down for the first time in English. The case looked closed. Within 48 hours, a single prisoner statement would put the whole identification on the edge of collapse. Here is our view of why this case is worth 30 minutes of anyone's time. The hard part was never the technology. Anyone can run an upscaler. The discipline, the thing that separates an OSINT analyst from a man with a magnifying glass and a theory, is the willingness to treat your own best find as a suspect. The patch was the easy part. Not over-believing the patch was the work. So they test it the only honest way, against everything that should agree with it. If a 1st Army Corps formation is in that stairwell, then independent evidence, rotation reports, prisoner interviews, intercepted comms, casualty notices, should at least not contradict it. Investigators pull publicly reported rotations for the Avdiivka axis through January and February 2024. They cross-check against the Deep State Mapping Project's unit annotations and against Russian mill blogger posts naming who is working which sector. Some of it lines up. A 1st Army Corps presence in the northern industrial belt is plausible and partly corroborated. Then the prisoner statement lands, and it nearly ends everything. A captured Russian soldier in a Ukrainian-released interrogation video, which carries its own heavy caveats because a man speaking under capture says what keeps him safe, names a regular motor rifle brigade as the unit holding that block, not the 1st Army Corps formation the patch points to. The two accounts disagree. If the prisoner is right, the patch is a false lead, possibly a traded or scavenged insignia, and the English language identification is wrong on its first outing. This is the most dangerous moment in any OSINT investigation, and most people get it backwards. The temptation is to defend the find you are proud of. The discipline is to assume your patch is the weakest evidence in the room, because it is a single half-second of compressed video, and the prisoner is a whole human being giving a whole account. So the team does the uncomfortable thing. They start trying to prove themselves wrong. And here is the take that will probably draw fire. The biggest threat to OSINT's credibility in this war is not Russian denial, and it is not bad analysts. It is good analysts who name a brigade for the clicks before the corroboration lands, who publish the crisp, upscaled patch on day 3 because the engagement is real and the caution is boring. The discipline that protects the field is also the discipline that loses the race to post first. Plenty of confident, wrong identifications have gone viral precisely because someone trusted a smear, which raises a question worth your honest answer. Put yourself in the analyst's chair on day 3. You have a defensible candidate and a contradicting prisoner statement that hasn't been verified. Would you have published the brigade name and let the corroboration catch up, or held it, knowing someone else might post first? There isn't a clean answer, and the comments are where this one belongs. The way out of the contradiction is not to pick a side. It is to ask whether both can be true. Frontline sectors in a collapsing city are rarely held by one clean unit. Reinforcements, attached companies, and 1st Army Corps formations were repeatedly fed in alongside regular brigades through the Avdiivka fighting. A prisoner from a regular brigade and a soldier from a 1st Army Corps unit can be in the same industrial block in the same week, because that is how the final assault on Avdiivka actually ran, overlapping, layered, units stacked on units. The patch and the prisoner do not have to agree. They can both be describing a sliver of the same crowded ground. Retention _ checkpoint 50% mid-roll hook. So the central question reshapes itself. It is no longer is the patch right or is the prisoner right. It is the harder one. How much weight can 11 compressed frames carry once everything around them stops contradicting them and starts merely coexisting with them? That is the line every analyst walks, and it has no signpost. To pin it down, the team goes after the one thing that would lift the identification from consistent with to supported, independent placement of that specific formation in that specific window. They comb Russian side sources, Millblogger channels, the verified Telegram channel Astra, casualty notices posted by relatives in regional groups. Casualty notices are grim, slow OSINT, and they handle them with the gravity such records deserve. These are names of the dead, used only to establish where a unit was, never as spectacle. Over several days they assemble a thin but real pattern of 1st Army Corps losses reported from the Avdiivka direction in the right weeks. It is not proof the man in the doorway was from that brigade. It is proof the brigade was bleeding men into that fight at that time. The patch now sits inside a context that supports it rather than fighting it. One obstacle remains, and it is the oldest one in the discipline. Even if the brigade is in the sector, the individual patch could still be wrong, traded, scavenged, worn out of formation. The team cannot eliminate this. No one can from a single clip. What they can do is state it plainly, which is exactly what separates an identification from an accusation. So the published assessment is hedged on purpose. The insignia is most consistent with a named 1st Army Corps brigade. That brigade is independently placed in the sector in the right window, and the identification should be read as the strongest available reading, not a verdict, a lead that survived its own cross-examination. One detail stuck with us through all of it. In the cleanest surviving frame, the soldier's sleeve is pulled slightly back, the way a man's clothing rides when he is moving fast and low. He is not posing. He has no idea a camera is on him for half a second. Everything the investigation hangs on, the shape, the color, the ghost of letters, exists only because of an accident of motion in a stairwell neither side controlled. The entire identification rests on a fraction of a second that was never meant to be seen. That is the strange truth of this kind of work. The most valuable evidence is almost always the evidence no one staged. Retention_checkpoint, approximately 21 o'clock microfinal 3. The identification held. The brigade was named carefully with every caveat intact. What remained was the question that doesn't appear in any catalog. What does it actually buy you to know whose arm filled a doorway for 11 frames? What Russia said in the end was nothing, which is itself a data point. There was no official acknowledgement of the footage, no denial, no comment on which unit held that block. That silence is normal. Russia's defense ministry does not narrate its order of battle for analysts, but the absence of a counterclaim, combined with the casualty pattern and the second corroborating clip, is part of why the assessment stood up rather than getting quietly retracted a week later, as so many overconfident IDs do. The strategic payoff is smaller and more honest than a thumbnail would suggest. Knowing a 1st Army Corps formation was committed to the Northern Industrial Belt in the final week refines the picture of how Russia closed out Avdiivka, not with fresh elite regulars alone, but by layering the older Donetsk formations into the costliest urban grinding alongside the regular brigades. One patch does not prove that. 100 patches, 100 casualty notices, 100 geolocated clips, each handled with this much suspicion, slowly do. That is what the open source order of battle actually is, not a single revelation, but 10,000 small, doubted, cross-checked claims stacked until a shape emerges. We cut the full technical walkthrough, the frame alignment, the catalog matching, the lettering recovery, for length here. Comment the word patch if you want that as its own video, built step by step on a single insignia so you can see exactly where a careful analyst stops and a careless one keeps going. Retention_checkpoint. Last 60s payoff, plus open loop, which leaves the 11 frames. They began as a smear no one had captioned and ended as a hedged, defensible English-language identification of a Russian brigade in an Avdiivka stairwell in the last days of the city. Not because the image was good, it was terrible. They got there because every person who touched it treated the patch as the suspect and not the answer, tested it against everything that should have agreed with it, and refused to publish the crisp lie the algorithm offered them. The lesson outlasts the war. A single frame is a lead, never a verdict. And the most dangerous moment in OSINT is the one where a blurry patch makes you feel certain. If you want to watch that exact discipline applied to a 9-second clip and a single rooftop, the geolocation that anchored this whole case, that breakdown is next.